All right, welcome everybody around the world, and welcome to all my subscribers. So, I'm very happy because I finally get a chance to do another live stream over these last few weeks since just before, during, and just after the holiday season. Due to everything going on, I haven't been able to. So, anyways, enough about that. I bet you the cat's going to start meowing now. But big news tonight, and I just checked before doing this live stream, and the actual footage and all of that didn't break yet. It hasn't come out yet. So I'll keep glued and posted, and I'll update everybody as it goes, because this is going to be a pretty major story. But anyways, for this stream, there's a lot of different things I want to talk about. But for this video, focusing on a few relevant things that are all related to one another. The great disclosure that's supposed to occur today, this is actually from News Nation. The other day, they hosted an interview with a new whistleblower that nobody's heard before, military whistleblower, and he gave this testimony. And by the way, I just want to mention, over the last few years, you've seen, I think it's Jeremy Corbell and Louis Elizondo, and then David Grouch, in each their own times, and then all together at all these hearings, and other people as well, making all these big prominent developments and talks on UFO, UAP, and ET disclosure. We're currently just at the stage where years ago the American government basically admitted, they released their own videos of UAPs, UFOs. It was around that time, after that happened, they actually came up with the term UAP, and it's in the process of trying to replace the term UFO, which everybody used for the last like 80 years or whatever. But don't forget that over these recent years, we've had all these quite big developments. Nothing like this has ever transpired in the last 80 years of, 75 years now, of UFOlogy. But all those big hearings in Congress, and the fact that it was on the news and being openly talked about, and the fact that they had these skiffs where there is top secret information, it could just be related to military stuff. But nonetheless, as observers on the outside, we see that they're having these skiffs. So there is secret, very secret stuff being spoken about that the public is not allowed to hear. So anyways, one of these new whistleblowers that people haven't heard of before came out on News Nation, did an interview. He looked like a very serious person. Did not, the look on his face was pure military. He's had, Kitty, psst, don't scratch the floor. He's going to start meowing. But you could tell from the look on his face that he's in the military. He has a serious life. He's done serious things, and he is telling a serious story. But nonetheless, it's just like any other of many, probably countless other testimonies and stories, but every single one of them is important. And his testimony was that he was part of this UFO retrieval program, and they went to this crash site, and he saw the UFO, and it looked like this egg, and it was super advanced, and he said there's no way that any human nation possesses this technology, right, as far as he could figure, right? But we've heard lots of stories like that, but still, every single one is important. And not every single witness is at the same level of credibility. I'm not saying that all witnesses are not credible. I'm just saying, right? We don't know this guy full well. Has he been fully vetted? Whatever, right? Most people take people with a grain of salt. They judge them by their internal instinct, what their gut tells them. Are they telling the truth or not? That's what everybody really does. And my gut says that he's probably telling the truth. But more importantly, there's footage associated with it. Let me just let the cat out. I knew that was coming. It always irritates me, but nonetheless, he always gets up, meows to go outside when I start doing a video. But there is a clip associated with this. I believe offhand, if I heard correctly, that this clip is from this whistleblower, or it's associated with this whistleblower. Like it was from the helicopter that he was flying, whatever it might be, right? So I think the footage that is to be released and shown, which is very, very special thing to occur, I believe it's related to the story that he told. Okay, so I'm looking to see I'm looking to see an egg-shaped craft, and I don't know how much this footage is going to show, but allegedly this is what is going to be released today, okay, by News Nation, and maybe it's exclusive to News Nation, but it's probably going to dribble its way around on everybody else's channels once it does break. With this footage, they've already released a short clip of it. It's only a few seconds long, but it's up in the helicopter looking down, flying over these sandy looking mountains, pale brown mountains, like dirt, sand, whatever. Very hilly, very rugged terrain, very steep slopes everywhere. And the helicopter is way up high, just like coming down. And then the short preview clip cuts out. Well, the full footage is supposed to be shown today. All I can imagine is that, worst case scenario is that we're just going to see the helicopter fly over and a little small egg thing on the ground way down below. And then that's all we're going to get. What I'm hoping for, though, is we're going to get something juicier. We might see the helicopter land down at the site. We might see, maybe at least a few minutes of the teams getting together and the craft just right there, like 10, 20, or 30 feet away. Maybe we're going to see some designs or things on the craft that will show more detail. Maybe the craft will be open. We'll get a peek inside. Maybe the inhabitants will be there alive or not alive. You know what I mean? It'd be very interesting what we could potentially see in a released footage that's, not unprecedented, but in a way unprecedented. So I'm looking forward to that. It hasn't broken yet as far as I have seen just before the start of this video. But that's a major important thing. The other thing is, and I've said before, Stephen Greer, I like Stephen Greer. I was there when the Disclosure Project first went out to Congress. I think it's like 20 years ago now. I think it happened way back when I was still like 18 years old. It was a very long time ago. And I remember seeing that, and he had like 400, like most of them were like military or whatever, like very high level, like credible whistleblowers, not just random people. And he had like 400 of them, and they all gave testimony. In the total length of time, it was before the press club, I believe it was, but they're testifying like under oath for Congress, as if they were testifying to Congress. And I'm sure everything was transcribed. Like this was the big momentous event where all the whistleblowers been gathered. They're willing to share the information, and they came out and shared it in one huge thing. That was the Disclosure Project. That was the most monumental thing to ever occur for UFOlogy, in my opinion. And from there, that was a domino effect for all this whistleblowerness and all these things that have transpired over the last 20 years in UFOlogy, right? But Stephen Greer, pioneered that huge project. So he deserves credit. A lot of people think that he's gone off kilter lately. I'll reserve my comments on this, but at the end of the day, I'm vouching for Stephen Greer. Okay. And he has said recently that there's going to be huge disclosure in the month of January. He's not the only person to say this. There's a few other people out there, like prominent figures in this field, and they've all said that in January, there's going to be this disclosure. Was the disclosure just the News Nation thing I've talked about? I don't know. At first, I didn't think, and then I saw the News Nation thing, and then I'm like, well, is that the disclosure they were talking about? I kind of don't think it is. But it'd be kind of coincidental that you're going to have multiple disclosures coming out at once, but it might be like that for a reason. Maybe somebody knew that one of the disclosures was going to pop out first, and then they thought, okay, well, it's just good time to pop out a little bit more disclosure, and maybe it's just cropping up together like that, which you could say, makes sense. But whatever the case might be, if it's just this one whistleblower thing that gets shown, and maybe because of the grandeur of the footage, it will be like ultimate disclosure. Like imagine that. I mean, that is a possibility. Like what if they do show an alien craft up close, alien technology and or bodies or beings alive, and you get to see it, even if it's just for like 2 or 3 minutes, but we all see it. It's been unleashed by a news source. It's out there for the world to see. Everybody will have millions of copies. That will be in itself a form of disclosure. You don't need to hear somebody in a suit say, oh, blah, blah, blah is real, blah, blah, blah isn't real. You will be seeing it, right? So that is a possibility that maybe Greer and the others knew that this big story was going to break and we are going to see something magnificent. So we just have to wait and see. But hopefully it is something monumental. Stephen Greer, God bless him, has said a number of times, it's always gotten me and others excited that there's going to be this point in time where he's going to reveal this or disclosure this. And then, in my 20 plus years studying stuff and researching and everything in UFOlogy, I've seen everything under the sun, heard everything under the sun. And every single time it's been like, oh, we're going to reveal something. It's never something new. It does not add to the pot of valuable information or facts that haven't already been known. That's the problem, right? And this whole disclosure movement, even with the important figureheads going to Congress and all that, pushing for disclosure on the news and everything, nothing outside of what we've already known has been revealed. And it's just like this little pipsqueak type process. I'm not saying that about the figureheads. I adore them. But the process is like pipsqueak. It's like you're just squeezing out one little drop at a time. And the little drops you get so excited for. And when the drops drop out, it's just like, man, we already knew that. There's nothing new. It's like a tease. That's what I mean by pipsqueak. I just couldn't think of the right word for it. But I do have hope and faith that it will build and become something more. I think that this whole movement of all those figureheads, and God bless them, going to Congress and all this and that there, I think that is, I don't want it to be, but I think it will be futile. I'm impressed that it's gone as far as it has, which gives me hope that it could push past this hurdle I'm about to mention. But the logical fact, common sense fact shows, and I'm sure all those figureheads know this, that the secrecy rules, laws, whatever they are in effect for reasons in the military and the government and everything. And if the government and the military have deemed secrets, deemed things to do with UFOs, aliens, blah, 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 as secret, then it's for a reason. Okay? Whether we like the reason or not, that's immaterial to this. They have deemed that it needs to be secret. Okay? It may not be because, the public's not ready to hear that there are aliens. Everybody has always wanted aliens to be real and believed in them since like the 20s. They were making like movies about aliens and stuff back in the days of old black and white TV and radios, right? Everybody's always thought about aliens, made movies about them coming to Earth. It's not like we'll be magically shocked at the concept of aliens being real. It could just be a military, like security type thing, a need for secrecy, right? A valid reason. Like, no, this stuff has to be secret for a blah, blah, blah reason. It's got to do with security. You know what I mean? It could be something like that. Okay. And the very fact is, common sense, the secrecy is in place for a reason. It wasn't flippantly put in place. It is put in place so well that there's many different scenarios, but in many cases, the stuff is so secret that Congress can't hear about it. The president doesn't know about it. 99% of everybody in politics and government and military don't know about it. Only those at that level with that secrecy clearance in a need-to-know basis in some or most cases would know certain things. And it's designed like that and kept like that with these rules of secrecy for a reason. Okay? And you can't go breaking those rules, laws, whatever they might actually be. Whichever one, it would be very hard to break those rules because at the end of the day, I don't know what they talk about in those skiffs. You could easily have a whistleblower figure saying whatever he wants, right? But in terms of pulling out top secret documents and showing top secret documents, you may not be allowed to do that by the rules that you've agreed to by participating in those programs. And if you're aware of certain programs, nobody's going to believe you unless you can show credentials that you participated in them. And I think that's what the point of these skiffs and everything has been. But my point is, even if legally they're allowed to, in skiffs, show what is super top secret to the astonishment of whoever else is allowed to be in that skiff, at the end of the day, I still think that there are some things, even the grand overlaying umbrella, that must, according to them, remain top secret. And that stuff will never get discussed outside the rooms, of the people who have those high clearances. Okay, and it's all being done for a reason, probably for our benefit, for the people's benefit. Okay, and it could be dangerous to try and break that wall of secrecy. Okay, certain beans might be spilled and it might cause problems for security. It might be a whole, imagine if, the beans are spilled and hypothetically they say that this group has craft over here or whatever, and that gets spilled out, and then some foreign nation wants to go invade to try and steal the craft, like you would see in some Hollywood movie, right? That's not an impossible scenario. Things like that have happened on planet Earth for decades because you have nations spying on each other and everything. There's security implications for all of this as well. Okay, so I don't think the public would go bonkers. I don't think there would be public chaos. The markets might be affected, but those things get affected by anything. Um, but I don't think society would decay because people find out UFOs and aliens are real. I don't think so. It might become problematic if they find some grim scenario out. Um, but whatever, I often wonder to myself, what could be if it's not just security for this top secrecy need, what what if it's a grim scenario or just a frightening scenario? One could be hypothetically that there are beings that live in underground, like cavern systems or like civilizations under the ground, even if just in like one or two places on the entire planet. Maybe there is some underground habitat like that, and they're advanced. Maybe they've been there for millions of years or thousands of years. And that might terrify people on the surface thinking, oh, underground is this, but they would have been here for thousands of years and you've lived your whole life and they haven't come up and done anything as far as you know. So really, there's no reason to freak out. Um, and a lot of people, keen to UFOlogy now always throw around the concept that, there's beings that live underground or in these oceanic bases, right? Um, but hearing and finding proof that that's real might still shock people. But I don't think society would decay because of that. Most people have that stuff on their mind, right? So I have a hard time thinking what could be such a bad scenario. I don't believe in some far-fetched sci-fi scenario. Um, of anything heinous happening. Like I don't think Earth is a place where they do harvesting of creatures. I don't believe in that crazy scenario. I mean, if each planet is a different evolution of its own, if you come from another planet, no creature or plant on this planet could possibly benefit you. It's an entirely different evolution. You know what I mean? You can't use anything on the planet as food or medicine or anything. It's impossible unless some way your two planets evolved together. And that's impossible. So you're never going to find that unless two planets were seeded with the exact same things and went through the same evolution. You can't do that. So I don't believe any of these kooky, far-out scenarios, but it makes you wonder what could be the need and the reason for all the secrecy. But at the end of the day, I don't think that secrecy will ever be breached. I think it's there for a reason. It's always going to be in place. Maybe the public will get to hear some more stuff, but if you stop and think about it, they've already admitted that UAPs, UFOs are real. They've released footage from the government and the military in America. Okay, their own footages. If I'm not mistaken, one of the footages from the Pentagon shows a pyramid, an upside down pyramid flying around. I'm pretty sure that clip was actually released by the government or the military. Um, so fantastic clips, but the joke of it is that, in my opinion, they released them without the spectacular message and declaration that aliens and UFOs are real, which is true. They didn't declare that, but they declared that, hey, yeah, UAPs, UFOs are real, but we don't know what's piloting them. So they leave this suspicion in the air that it could be just people from another country. It's a secret military craft from another country, right? So by leaving that air in there, they've made a half disclosure, right? So they've admitted UAPs are real. But if you have common sense, you would know that these craft do impossible things. There's so many of them. They are not being piloted by another nation. If another nation possessed such craft like that, and for decades, they would by now have publicly exposed it, shown it, and said, hey, look, we're superior to all the other nations on the planet because we have anti-gravity vehicles. Can you imagine if China just came out one day like, hey, we now can admit that we have a fleet of anti-gravity vehicles. We worked on them for 20, 30 years or whatever, and we've got them now. Look how great we are. Any nation that does that would do that. When America went to the moon, they went to the moon. What did they do? Keep it secret? No, they talked all about it. Hey, we went to the moon. It was a big deal. Everybody watched it on TV. That's my point. If you make a great technological achievement, you're going to show it off to the world, right? Put your flag up on the moon, that type of thing. So if some other nation had these craft, and hundreds of them or thousands of them, capable of doing all these gravity-defying things and whatnot, they would have flexed their muscles and said, hey, look, these are our craft. Look how powerful of a nation we are. But no nation has done that. Okay? So it's just ridiculous. You know what I mean? Why are you going to pump out, if you're some other nation, pump out all these mundane jet-powered aircraft to fly around and use in your militaries, big burdensome heavy tanks and boats and all sorts of things? Why are you going to go building all of these big, heavy, expensive things that cost billions of dollars each when you could just have an anti-gravity craft that can accomplish so much better maneuvers on the battlefield and do whatever you desire? You know what I mean? So if you had that technology, if you had it and you're flying it around the world, then you would be flexing that muscle. You wouldn't be doing it all in secret, okay, unless it was in a testing phase. But this has been decades now where UFOs have been seen. So my point is that the common sense and the logic shows that these UFOs are not being piloted by another nation. The time is long gone for testing phases. I mean, they built the SR-71 Blackbird, okay, in the 1940s. People don't know this. To this day, the SR-71 Blackbird is the highest flying and the fastest flying plane in the world. Okay? Nothing can come close to its height that it can reach and the speed that it can go. And its true altitude and true speed are top secret. You're not allowed to know what they are. Okay? So that craft was developed in 1940s. In the 40s, they had propeller planes flying around in the wars. Okay? But in the 1940s, they were also working on the what would become the SR-71 Blackbird. It had different names back then, like A-18 or something like that. I can't remember. But I've got photos of it and everything. It was the late 40s they worked on it. Now, there's a lot more interesting stuff I could say about that craft and links to Roswell, but I won't get into it for here. So they built the SR-71 Blackbird. Now, my point is, what did America do with the SR-71 Blackbird? They developed it. They did its testing phases. It went through all those different A models. They each one looked similar, but a little bit different. They mastered the structure of the craft, its design and everything over a few years. And to this day, it is, as the best example, the most advanced and powerful and fast craft in the planet. Okay? Period. It's publicly known, but its stats are top secret. That's how much muscle they're flexing. Hey, look, we got the most advanced craft. It's so advanced, we can't even tell you how fast it is. But here it is. And it looks blinking awesome. It looks friggin' cool. It looks pretty awesome, man. It's like a space age vehicle, like a star cruiser. And they built it in the blinking 1940s in the period of a few years, testing it and blah, blah, blah. And it's the most advanced. What is the point of me saying this? That the logics applied to the facts that I've just stated are that if another nation was possessing secret technology to build UAP, anti-gravity craft and whatnot, they would not be keeping it secret and flying it around for multiple decades, 70, 80 years. It wouldn't be happening. So all these UFOs people have been seeing are not from another human nation. That is illogical, because the other human nations would have been flexing the muscle, saying, hey, look what we got. You think your SR-71 Blackbird is cool? Well, look what we got. Even if it took them 10 or 20 years to develop. The fact is, we've been seeing the same looking craft on this planet, long cigar-shaped craft. It's quite consistent. Flying saucer-shaped craft is very consistent. Spheres and egg-shaped craft, it is always consistent. And now we hear about tic-tac, but it's all quite similar, right? They don't look like something out of Star Trek or Star Wars. They resemble these very basic type shapes, and it's been consistent for 80 years. Okay, it's in a lot of videos and photos. There's a lot of them. Okay, so if it's not another human nation doing this, then who is it? And why do they have a presence here on this earth? Why are they not, as far as we know, really interfering with us, but just monitoring us, observing us? Why has this been occurring for 80 years? Okay. And it's got to be at least one, you know, I would like to say populist force, because it's not like you just have one UFO flying around the world for 80 years. You have fleets of them. Okay, so we basically have like a legion. We have fleets, like a legion of these unknown craft that have been on this earth for like 80 years, many different types, but a lot of them, I would say the majority of them, occupy 3 or 4 classic types of craft. That's a consistency over the 80 years that shows you that this other force is a large force. Okay, if they have hundreds of craft, or maybe in the low thousands of craft, then that shows you how populous they are. They must be in the thousands. So all you got to use is some common sense, and you can, in going by the ascertainable facts, okay, that there must be at least thousands of these more advanced people or beings somewhere on the earth, and they are not one of the earth nations. That's the key points. Okay, and why are they here, not interfering but observing? Well, that's not illogical. Maybe they are some other humanoid or whatever species from earth or from elsewhere, and they're just here observing us like scientists would. That's not an illogical concept, right? I personally believe that there could be good ones and bad ones out there. I mean, that's what I believe that there are, and that the good ones are known as messengers in the Bible, and the bad ones are known as fallen messengers in the Bible. And they each have their own motives and they're doing their own things. But generally speaking, they don't really butt in and interfere with human daily life. Yes, we know about abduction claims and this and that there, but generally speaking, those things don't happen to the vast majority of people. Okay, so that's just the scenario and the reality here. But anyways, getting into the next thing, this big talk. I made a video recently where I just briefly went over how there's quite a few key figureheads in all this type of talk and buzz in UFOlogy in the last few years. Nick Pope was one of them. Stephen Greer was one of them. There's a few other individuals. I've referenced it. There's one clip that I've shared in my community section to an old video from the 1990s where this whistleblower was saying that in 2025 is when, if you watch the clip, you'll see for yourself the actual words. There'll be some type of like disclosure or revelation. He basically said, I can't tell you these things until 2025, which implies that in 2025, there must be some type of scheduled or programmed disclosure event. And at that point there, he would be able to disclose these things because it has been disclosed. So it implies that there'd be disclosure in 2025. Greer has said this. Nick Pope said that there's some big event being spoken about and alluded to by higher ups, that some big event is going to happen soon on the earth in the next few years, between 2025 and 2027. In essence, there's quite a few key figureheads, more than 3, maybe 4 or 5, who all say the same thing. Okay, they're not all working together, but they're all saying the same thing, which shows and highly suggests that it is just a reality and the truth, that it's something that is going to happen, and different people in different positions have heard about it. So apparently, and even Corbell when said it, Corbell had this big reveal video. I like Corbell, by the way. I'm not being pessimistic, but Corbell had this big reveal video, and I know he knows things that he can't share, obviously, right? And he was very apprehensive to share things. And he ended up sharing something that he had just said he cannot share. He can only share off video, but they ended up sharing it on the video. A lot of people are mocking him for it, but I know the position that he's in. I mean, I can sympathize with that position, right? I know a lot of intense stuff. He knows probably infinitely more, and a lot of that stuff he's not allowed to know, and probably, and definitely a lot of it he is not allowed to share, especially the stuff he's not allowed to know, right? And one of the things he blurted out, and because he blurted it out, I can repeat it here, but it's not news to me. It didn't shock me. I actually expected this according to my own beliefs anyways. So and even the dreams I've had recently, which I've got on my channel from months ago. Before the drone showed up, I had these dreams about this great arrival and invasion. But anyways, so allegedly the Great Secret, which is probably the big event that's supposed to happen between 2025 and 2027, allegedly what this is, according to Corbell, is that, and I don't know why he said it if it's apparently so secret, but I'm not mocking him, right? Like I said, I like Corbell. I'm not being pessimistic here, right? But maybe he shouldn't have said it. He said, if I mention it, then it might alter things and, affect other things, and others who are involved in this might try to divert things, and it might obscure it or prolong it and this and that there, or confuse it. And I understand what he means by that, but I understand what it's like to be itching with excitement to share something that you really want to share. And even if you shouldn't share it, I know what that's like. So I sympathize with them. So I understand why he said that and they went and spilled the beans. But apparently what's coming is that there's this massive, like either a massive mothership or a massive fleet of craft that have been observed, tracked, whatever, coming through space towards Earth. And apparently they're going to make their way here between 2025 and 2027. So obviously, based on everything I've talked about for years in my book and all my YouTube channels, I believed that 2023, 2024, based on the prophecies of Daniel and such, like I cover in the book, were the end of days. Well, we just started 2025. That stuff is not disproven, as I've discussed in other videos. And, thankfully, we did see this huge influx for November and December of all this UAP activity around the world. It's something that's unparalleled. We've never seen anything like this. So we also had the conflict with Israel, which is fulfilling the prophecy of Ezekiel. So we have all reason to believe that everything is going according to plan. And, so far, we're only a few weeks past the end of 2024. So I don't think that stuff is disproven. And plus, I'm releasing a new edition of the book anyways. But in that book, I did have a chapter where I covered what if nothing happens in 2024, what to expect for 25, 26, 27, 28. I have a chapter where I cover that in this book. I covered all my bases. But it's not worrying about numbers. It's worrying about the events and what's going to transpire. It's going to happen soon. So from my religious perspective, I believe that, and I've said this a million times, but it's important, that, like I said, some of the beings here are good, some are bad. Some might be in between. It's just like people. But the bad ones are fallen angels. The good ones are angels. Angels is just the English rendering of the term messenger. Angel, I think, was the Latin term, but nonetheless, this will be say in English as well. But it's the word messenger. And in the Bible, as I've said a million times, it's also in both my books with the verses to prove it. When God created the earth, well, Genesis doesn't even talk about him creating the planet. It says that the planet existed, waste and void, and then he did a creation upon the planet. That's actually the reality of what it says. And then he put the humans on it and so forth after he created all the life and everything. But at the same time, in the opening verses, it says that he created the heavens. He stretched them out. Even science says that they expanded out and everything. He stretched out the heavens and it's filled with life. So throughout the Bible, countless verses, like I've shown in my books and in my videos, it tells us what the heavenly messengers are. It tells us that what we know today as heaven, according to the Bible, we only call it heaven because that's what it says in the Bible, right? But what the Bible calls heaven is outer space. If you look up all the verses where it talks about heaven, it talks about the stars, the sun, and the moon being in heaven. Okay, so heaven, the heavens are outer space. You look up, you see the heavens where the sun, moon, and stars are. There's plenty of verses. Okay, the messengers are in the heavens. They live in the heavens. They're called the host of the heavens, and they work for God. Right? I've said this a million times, but the takeaway from that is that out of the ones that are flying around mysteriously here on the earth and have been here for 80 years, what are they doing? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, they're messengers. They're either good or bad, somewhere in between, but they're messengers. That's what they are from a biblical lens. Okay? From a biblical perspective, they would be categorized as messengers. Why? Because the Bible says the messengers live up where the sun, moon, and stars are in the heavens. Right? But they come down to the earth, right? So that's what these beings are. And the good messengers have a primary biblical role. Well, as noted in the Bible, they have the role of observing and watching. They're also called watchers. So it makes sense that they would be watching, and that's what they're doing flying around now. So, from my perspective, this just proves, I mean, the presence of all this proves my biblical understanding of things. And even if there are bad ones flying around doing stuff, that only further proves the biblical, because the Bible and even First Enoch talk about that how some of the messengers who were sent to watch over the earth got led astray, were seduced by, were attracted to, whatever you want to term it, human women. They fornicated with them, and begat the Nephilim progeny, and they taught man all these forbidden arts. And the Bible tells us that Satan introduced sin into the world and tempts people to sin, and we have all this history. And then Revelation and the New Testament detail how Satan and them were in the heavens, and they were kicked out of the heavens and bound to the earth. Verses all over the place talking about that, in various places, I should say, in the New Testament. So we're told the cosmic history. We're told that the bad ones got kicked out of heaven. Jesus says there's no more place for them found in the heavens. Sorry, my throat's so dry. And that's what we're seeing here. So the big event that could be coming with this big fleet coming, well, the Bible says that Jesus will be coming with the clouds of the heavens, that he'll be coming with the legions, the armies of the heavens, that he'll arrive and send out all these messengers to the four corners of the world to gather the righteous and, to separate the wicked, and there'll be the great day of judgment. So we should be, from a biblical perspective, ironically, we should be expecting at some point, I mean, maybe they would just all teleport here, you know what I mean? Like you see in sci-fi movies, or maybe they would fly their way here. But at the end of the day, the big, great secret rumor is that a big ship or many ships, a huge fleet, something massive, like ridiculous, is making its way towards Earth, and it'll probably get here in the next few years. Okay, that's allegedly the great big secret. Now, I can't remember if it was Corbell or somebody else expanded on this and said that this is going to be a great deception and they're going to use it for tool deception. But I don't get with conspiracy theories like that there. When I was younger, I went down those avenues. And when I got older and did more research over my 20 plus years, I learned 99% of the conspiracies are all baloney. Depends on what you term conspiracy. Something that's secret doesn't make it a conspiracy, right? But most of the conspiracies out there are just bonkers. So I don't believe, and I especially don't readily believe, that there's going to be some big mothership, even though it was just like that in my dream. Nothing bad happened in my dream, but in my dream, a big mothership appeared in the sky, and then aliens started appearing on the earth and going up to people. But then I woke up soon after. One of the aliens walked right up to my face, and I saw it face to face, and then I turned and ran, hid in a bush, and then I woke up. So I can't say they're doing anything bad to us. They might have actually come there with the good angels to rapture us away from the earth, to escape all the destruction and everything at the judgment time. It could be that. I don't know. But ironically, I did have that in my dream, so I can't ignore that. I don't know if the dream was like real deal prophecy, but it certainly felt dead real, and it seemed prophetic. But nonetheless, that doesn't act as good evidence of anything, but that goes directly in hand with this great big secret. I mean, come on. Like, if there is some big mothership coming to the blinking planet in the next few years, and I go and have a dream months before I even heard this, where a big mothership appeared to the earth, I mean, it's kind of spooky, you know what I mean? So I have to consider it. But I don't believe that there's going to be some grim scenario like a negative invasion or anything like that. And thankfully, I think common sense, facts, and evidence are on my side, because all these things have been flying around for 80 years. They've never attacked or invaded on a grand scale. That's never happened, right? So clearly, they're just peaceful observers, right? Nothing bad really has happened on a grand scale, right? There's individual cases where people say blah, blah, blah. My point is, and I've already said that there are bad beings that might do some bad things. But on the grand scale, out of all the visitors to the earth, they're not all bad, right? And clearly the majority are good, or the good have a control over the bad, because even the bad are held at bay and can't do anything major. Okay? And all of the ones present must be majority good, because nothing bad overall has happened. And that's over the last 80 years. But not only that, in the last few months, with these massive sightings everywhere around the world, you would think something major is going to happen. Is it going to be bad? Oh, and now we hear this big mothership or fleet is making its way to the planet. Is it going to be a bad scenario? Well, I have to say, if they were that advanced and they were bad, would have already done something bad to us if they wanted to do something bad. That hasn't happened. There might be bad ones out there, but they're obviously being held at bay or kept in check to some degree by the other ones who are evidently out there who are not negative. Okay, so clearly that must be happening. And when we hear testimonies like the UFOs and the beings showed up at nuclear sites and disarmed nuclear craft, and certain things like that, that shows you there's an incentive for peace, right? Some people could look at it in a negative lens and say, oh, or they're showing that they have superiority over our weapons, and that's an act of hostility. Well, you could say anything you want, right? But at the end of the day, combined with the fact that nothing bad has happened, I'm quite sure that they're not bad. They're just indicating that, yes, we are superior. Your greatest weapons, we can just go boop and they don't work anymore. And we can go boop and then they do work again. So, yeah, you're inferior to us. And here's a hint, don't use nuclear weapons. Right? So that's what I think is going on with that. So I think overall, I think it's a majority positive force. I don't think anything negative or grim, so to speak, will happen. I don't think there's going to be a grim scenario of like some invasion, and that's the reason for all the secrecy. There might be a great arrival, but even from my biblical perspective, I'm expecting that. But I expect that to happen primarily at the end day itself, when Jesus arrives with the legions of the angels to let them go across the earth. I am perfectly open, as I've talked about for years, that some of these beings, the good ones, will come to Earth ahead of time. And I pointed out before that UFOs, which are, like I'm indicating, primarily piloted by good beings, that they all started showing up around 1948, which was the year of the rebirth of Israel. In the years just before that, where some UFOs were seen around the world, but not nowhere near as many. But some of them were seen before 1948. But again, these are the years when those two great world wars were occurring. Penultimate times of change in the world, and all of that built up to the rebirth of Israel in 1948. That's only relevant not because, the land of Israel and its dirt and its plants are super important to God. You know what I mean? This earth is going to be destroyed, and we're going to get a new earth, as the Bible says, right? It's not that God is fascinated by this place with dirt, water, and trees and people. It's that he used these things as indicators and signs, right? So in the prophecies and over time, when certain things happen to these certain places that are noted in the prophecies, we can see that, yep, supernatural, omnipotent God foretold all this would happen because he's the creator. He's in charge of everything. He knows everything. And he's letting us know there's going to be a judgment day, right? So when we see a rebirth of Israel in 1948, and then the messenger starting to appear, okay? And as I show in my book, this is very important, the first Enoch prophecy of 4,900 years culminates, and it's meticulous, it's 100% proof. It ends 1948. And that could indicate, even though the prophecy itself doesn't say the Nephilim will be released, but it says that the Nephilim and the fallen angels will be imprisoned under the mountains for 4,900 years, and then it stops. It doesn't elaborate further, but you could infer from that in 1948, therefore, the appearance of these UFOs, some of which were piloted by bad beings who did some abductions and some bad stuff, that's the fallen angels. Their time of imprisonment ended 1948. They show up around 1948. It doesn't take rocket science to see the connection there, okay? And if the bad ones are getting released, you would think, and if we're in that final generation, I mean, Jesus said, when you see Israel reborn, you know that I'm at the door and it is nigh. That famous prophecy I've covered, because he says the fig tree, when you see new shoots, the fig tree and new shoots apply to Israel. okay, throughout the Bible, as I've shown. So we know that when Israel was reborn, not only does it fit with the prophecies that calculate the end days from the Bible, as I cover in my book, but also it connects over to Jesus' separate prophecy that is an indicator of when he is nigh and at the door. So since 1948, Jesus has been at the door. He's at the door. We know he arrives with the angels. So think about that. 1948, the fallen angels, their period of imprisonment has ended. We know from Revelation that when Jesus arrives on the final day itself, that 4 fallen angels are released, as per trumpet number 6, I think it is. We know that. But this isn't taking away from that. This is just saying the Nephilim and other fallen angels, because there's lots of them, right? So their imprisonment ended 1948, right? The world wars were occurring during that finalizing point. World wars ended. Israel was reborn in 1948. That means Jesus is nigh, and he's at the door waiting. So you would like to think that, yeah, angels would be showing up at that point. So there you go. So from my biblical perspective, everything that has transpired for these last 80 years up until now only further proves the point. And the way that it's escalated at the end of 2024 only further proves the point. And in 2025, with all these big stories and disclosures happening, only further proves the point. Okay? Oh, there's a big fleet of craft coming here, or a big mothership. Only further proves the point. We're told in Revelation that the heavenly Jerusalem is a great city that comes down from the heavens to the earth. So we should be expecting something big coming to the earth. We're told that the legions, the armies of the heavens will be coming to the earth. So we should be expecting that. That's my point, right? We see lots of unknown, mysterious craft flying around observing us. That doesn't confuse me. That's the messengers, whether good or bad, to each their own, but that's the messengers. They're supposed to appear around this time. So to me, everything's lining up for it's going to be the biblical event. And I think that like 99% of people out there are clueless to this. They're not perceiving it through a biblical lens whatsoever, right? And the problem with that is if you're not doing that, if you haven't done your biblical homework, you haven't, cracked the egg on all these things, you're just going to think one day, even if you are a religious person, oh, aliens are real. Oh, they're coming down to the earth. Oh, no, you're going to think the Bible's all a lie because you didn't do your homework and see the solution and how it talked about all this stuff from day one anyways, right? So it talked about it from day one. The extraterrestrial interaction with Earth was discussed from day one in the first chapters and verses, in the first chapters of Genesis, and it's talked about all the way up the involvement and interaction between the two until the final pages of the New Testament. So all the way through the Bible, it's been fully disclosed. I've got other videos where I talk about this. So the Bible's always shown us that reality. Okay, so these beings, these watchers, they've always been here according to the Bible. Okay, if we look at all the other ancient civilizations on the planet, they talk about their gods were here. They could fly around. Zeus used to have flying cities. Okay, in Hindu religion, some of the asuras had flying cities. A lot of them had flying craft. Zeus and them had technological weapons. He had a metallic staff that could emit electricity, plasma, lightning from it, right? Which were crafted by the Cyclops, a mythical race of beings who are obviously technologically advanced, and they built a lot of interesting trinkets for the Greek and Roman gods. So I think the reality is that these beings, more advanced beings, have been here for a very long time, and primarily their role was to be watchers to help govern the world. And even in the Tanakh, as I talk about, there are one or two verses where it openly says this. They translated it as something else in the churches so as to not alarm people, obviously. But Judaism knows, even certain groups in Judaism know the reality that God divided up the nations of man, or the tribes of man, according to the numbers of the sons of God. So at that time, there were some of these beings that God appointed as governors over certain groups of peoples, regions on the planet. They were the Baals, and it's talked about in the Bible. And the people started worshiping these beings, right? That's why like each town had a Baal. You had like Baal Zephon, Baal Zephor, and you had this and that there. Those were the lords, the lording beings over each town originally. And then over time, when the people started worshiping them, because, hey, they were more advanced, they were more intelligent, maybe they had telepathy, or maybe they just had technology, maybe they had superpowers, right? Just different abilities. But the people worshiped them as gods. That's the thing. And when that happened, God got pissed off with them and he punished them. And he says, I'm taking that name out of your mouth, the Baals. I don't want to hear it anymore. And Baal in Hebrew means my Lord, right? So it's the same as with, I think, Babylonian or something, or Sumerian. It means my Lord. So you're talking, or Lord, right? So in the biblical verse, God says, I don't want you to call me Baal, Lord, anymore. A lot of Christians don't even know that. They would think, oh, why are you calling God Baal? Well, in Hebrew, it means Lord, right? Those were the lords, the sons of God, the Elohim, the celestial beings that God appointed over, right? They probably all looked human. The point is that they had special abilities that regular humans didn't. And the regular humans over time ended up worshiping them. The Bible's full of verses talk about this, right? The people look up to the stars and worship their host, right? They worship the messengers of the heavens and this and that there. They did this. That's probably where all of the idolatry and everything came from in the world. Primarily was from that there, not because we are dumb cavemen banging rocks together, but because of that. There were star beings landing down on the earth, teaching people how to build pyramids and all this stuff, and giving them false religions over time. You know what I mean? That's a pretty dangerous scenario, but that makes sense of absolutely everything. All the mysterious, like ancient civilizations and how are all these different people so advanced? That's what it was. The reality was back then that star beings used to come down to the earth. They've been here ever. They did come down to the earth just like they do now, right? That's my point. They've always been here watching. There's some bad ones, but there's a lot of good ones. Okay, and they probably both have bases here on this earth, stations, Safeways, whatever you want to call it, probably is common sense. So this is what the Bible has told us since day one. That's the reality. And it even talks about, as I've said before, you could even say reptilians, because the Nahash in Eden, a Nahash is a humanoid reptile. Okay, even according to Jewish understanding, right? It's a humanoid reptile, and it's more cunning, more intelligent than a human. Okay, so it just fits in. And the Bible's full of other places where it talks about the messengers. They appeared, say, at the tomb of Jesus, right? They looked human, but they wore glittering or sparkling apparel, depending on your translation version. Okay, they just appeared out of nowhere, right? They materialize in their people, but dressed in some really crazy space age looking outfits. And then when they're done talking to you, they're gone. Or they ascend up and go up into the heavens. Where you'll hear about these lights that move around and guide people, like to the baby Jesus. This light would move in the sky, and the people followed it. It would stop at times and shine a light down on them, and eventually parked over the baby Jesus. And when it parked over Jesus, the people on board that light manifested. It says the host of heaven, a number of the hosts of the heavens appeared suddenly before them, and they all celebrated the birth of baby Jesus. Right? These were the ones piloting the thing that was guiding the wise men and everybody to the baby Jesus. Right? That's what it was. And then they appeared there. And when it was done, when they were done celebrating, they went back up into the heavens. So there's always been this interaction on the earth. Jesus said he's not from this world, he's from above. There's even verses in John that allude to a great secret that we're not even from this world. We're sojourners on it. And I believe it's from the mouth of Jesus. Right? And there's deeper things attached to that, but I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole for this video. Some people are from this earth, some people aren't. But anyways, let's not get into all that there. But we're all here now, and that's what matters, right? So all that other stuff doesn't really matter. That was the before time. But yeah, so if something big is coming, I'm really hoping that it's the heavenly Jerusalem or the Christ's army returning. That's what I'm hoping. I would really be shocked and dismayed if it's just a big giant spaceship of neutral or bad beings that are going to be like, hey, who's Jesus? I don't know who Jesus is. Jesus is supposed to rule the cosmos. So I'm expecting this big arrival, and maybe even the one in my dream, to be that. Okay, the one in my dream could have been during the celestial battle, because it was quite chaotic up in the sky. Because in other in-days dreams that I've had, there is a cosmic battle happening. In Revelation, it says that there's going to be a cosmic battle of good versus evil in the heavens above, right? So those things would be happening. So we technically could see the arrival of something bad. However, from a biblical perspective, it said that Satan and all those who served him were cast down to this planet and bound here, and they were not allowed to leave and go back into the heavens. So, adhering to that, as a believer of the word, I have to believe, stubbornly therefore, that nope, a spaceship of bad aliens is not going to be arriving from outer space. It's not. Now, maybe they had a spaceship here on this planet. This is just being ridiculous, and they flew it up just to the borderline where they were allowed to go, and then turned the ship around and came back pretending that they came from deep space. But the reason why that's ridiculous is for a number of reasons, but one most important reason is that allegedly there's something out in deep space coming towards Earth now. There's nothing about it going out and then turning around. That's stupid. It's something coming from deep space. Okay? Coming from deep space. And it could be anything, good or bad or neutral. It's probably not a giant meteor, because if it was, then that would have been known and said and been the great secret. The great secret is that something big is coming. No mention of a big space rock to worry about. Okay? So something's coming, allegedly. That's what they say. Okay. I believe something will happen. And I believe that whenever it does occur, hopefully this year, maybe next year, maybe the year after, whenever it does occur, I believe it's going to be the biblical end of days. And everybody should believe in God, believe in Jesus, and believe that you need to be saved, and that you should reform from sin in order to be saved as part of the process. Nobody's perfect, but everybody should try to be perfect. But reform to be saved. Sorry, I don't want to end it like that. Reform, right? Turn your heart to God, stop your sins, and become a good person who doesn't sin. That's what you got to do. That's a better way to put it. Do that to your best ability. Try as hard as you can, and there you go. That's what you got to do. And when you do that, you'll be ripe and ready for whenever Judgment Day comes. If it's this year, next year, the year after, or whatever. So that's what I believe biblically that everybody needs to do, is get right. And at the end of the day, even hypothetically, taking the Bible and God and all that out of the equation and just having an alien hypothetical scenario where more advanced race from the cosmos comes here, but it's got nothing to do with God and this and that there. In a hypothetical scenario where there is no God and Jesus and all that. Sorry, something's in my eye. Right? You could still have, and this is my point saying that, for like any atheist listening potentially, is that even if some godless aliens came here and we live in a godless atheist reality, let's just say, these aliens might still have standards, and if they observe our Earth, come here and observe us, they might think we're terrible beings that need to be wiped out, right? You know what I mean? You could still have beings that have standards of nobility and cleanliness and spiritual purity and this and that there, even in the absence of God and Jesus and this and that there. People, even atheists, have standards, right? So even if you had this hypothetical scenario in some big arrival happened with beings, atheists need to understand as well that such beings in that scenario might still judge us like God and Jesus would. You know what I mean? They might view us, scan us, and think, oh my gosh, you think like that and you do that? Get rid of him, please. Bzoop, and you're gone. You know what I mean? They might want to come here and cleanse the world. They might be like, oh, we don't want to wipe out this intelligent species. They have an average IQ of 100. Our average IQ is 10,000. But hey, let's not wipe them out because that won't be very nice. But let's quickly scan all their minds and see which ones have, really dastardly thought patterns. And then we will be more justified to get rid of them. You know what I mean? That's like you go out and you adopt 100 dogs, but some of the dogs start biting you and fighting each other and ripping the house apart. You're going to get rid of those dogs, right? So if some super advanced race comes here, they might still judge humans by the same type of biblical standards of being good and not being bad. So I think even for an atheist, you would still have something to fear if you have a grand arrival of beings from another place. They're going to be of a standard. And intelligent people have argued before that any advanced civilization would have realized at the end of the day that the only way to be progressive is to be constructive, not destructive, right? Now, that's the overall trend. You will always at some point have something or someone destructive, even if they are super advanced and superior, hence what happened with Satan. right? You always have that occur because that's just the byproduct of free will. It's always a possibility, right? Um, but that's just an aspect of reality. That's just a raw byproduct of free will. It can go in either direction. But anyways, I've yacked for enough for today. So let me get going, folks. But as soon as this thing breaks on News Nation, I'll let everybody know where to find the clip. I'll post the link. So if you're having trouble finding it, you can find it. You can see whatever it is they do discuss in this video. And, don't anybody get worried and scared of anything. My advice to everybody is live your life irregardless. Like, just live your life. Like, whether it's going to be good or terrifyingly bad, maybe it's going to be Jesus coming to rapture us all. Maybe it's going to be terrible space monsters coming here to eat us all or something silly. You know what I mean? So what? You know what I mean? Even if it's a bad scenario, it doesn't matter what scenario it is. No blinking difference. You need to have this type of mindset, man. This is the way you're going to plod through anything and everything that could happen. It's going to be really good. It's going to be really bad. Anywhere on that scale, whatever it is, don't make a darn difference. You're going to live your life. I'm going to live my life and just live my life and do my best and work my hardest. You know what I mean? And try to excel and be all that I can be and do all that I can do and excel. That's all you got to do. You don't have to sit here and worry about, because if that is coming, you can't do anything about it. So why ruin the time in between now and then? Live your life, enjoy it, make the most of it, and this and that there. Don't go spending any money. Don't alter or do anything different that you would normally do. Just live your normal life. Don't do any type of physical preparation for any of this stuff. Just live your normal life and try to be a good person. That's all you got to do. Right? And if you do that, you'll have a more pleasant time until whatever it is does arrive. Okay? So, anyways, I just want to mention, I believe it was Corbell who said that, if I remember or heard correctly, that this big thing that's coming, some people are going to try and say is a space rock, but it's not, and that's a lie. If I heard that correctly, I just wanted to say in response to that, well, I've had my prophetic dream since I was a kid, and one of the first domino events that takes place is the great fiery star, this giant rock or object, whatever it is, collides with the earth, and the earth shakes and goes into darkness, right? And at that point, this celestial battle takes place overhead in the darkness amidst the stars. That's like the first thing that always occurs, this great thing coming down. So when I heard him say there's this big thing coming, then he mentioned it, but it's not a space rock, if I heard correctly. It just drew me right back to my dream. Well, in my dream, it definitely looked like a big space rock coming. Maybe it was a big spaceship, but I highly doubt it would crash into the earth. And I highly doubt anything that we have on the planet could shoot it down. So I'm pretty sure this big spaceship ain't coming across space to crash into the earth, unless it's unpiloted and it's on a crash course because it's not piloted. But I mean, what are the odds of it hitting the planet? That'd be kind of ridiculous. Actually, that's kind of a cool idea, because you think this planet or any planet at random in the universe is been there billions of years. It's had plenty of time for some random spaceship. Maybe its inhabitants, maybe one guy was flying it from another planet and he died. Maybe he had a heart attack while flying the spacecraft. He died, and the life support system stayed on and whatever, and the craft just keeps going forward. I bet you there's probably, because of how big the universe is, there's probably millions of cases where you have derelict craft, maybe still powered, just flying through space. They don't even have to be powered to keep flying through space because they'll have the momentum, right? And they probably crash into planets eventually. Eventually, some of them, right? So on some planets, maybe Earth, but it would be deep somewhere. But on some planets, I would say it's fair to say that, just going by the odds, there are probably derelict, abandoned, or deserted, or whatever spaceships like that have crashed into planets somewhere. That'd be so cool. You go, in 1,000 years' time or whatever, we're flying through space exploring. We get to this planet, it's like untouched. There's no like development, civilization on it. But then you see this massive ancient spaceship from like a billion years ago crashed into it somewhere. You know what I mean? Like rotting away. And it'd be like living in one of the alien movies. That'd be pretty cool. But anyways, let me get going, folks. That's enough for today. But anyways, take care, folks, and God bless.